Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be another palette dupes video. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today's video is going to be another palette dupes video. I've been doing this series for close to a year now, where once a month I like to come on here to compare some color stories to see how similar they actually are. So I've got four-ish color stories to play with today. They're all going to be cool tones, because we know I love a cool tone. And first I'm going to tell you just something a little bit about the palettes themselves individually, and then we're going to go down to the floor and we're going to do some comparative swatches. So I hope you're here for that. But before we get to the video, it may be good to know that I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences what makeup I like and how I like going about doing my makeup. I've also been a makeup reviewer for more than a decade, so when I say something is a favorite, it's a favorite. This channel is all about eyeshadow palettes, essence and Catrice, and getting the use out of your makeup. So if you're here for that, I hope you'd like to consider subscribing and joining my Snow Angel family by clicking down below. So I do apologize if you hear any noises in this video. I have my door open to the balcony. It's been absolutely sweltering in the Netherlands. We went from having virtually no spring at all to straight up summer in the time span of like a week and a half. I mean, I was still wearing long sleeve t-shirts and blouses until well into May, and all of a sudden I'm wearing like little jumpsuits. So if you hear anything, I do apologize. Let's get to these palettes. So I said there would be four-ish because sometimes I rope in just an extra one because, you know, I want to try and be as complete as possible as I can be. I've compared other cool tone color stories in the past before, but from what I remember, there are at least two new palettes in this lineup, and one that is absolutely 100% new because I haven't even tried it on my face yet. But because I wanted to see how similar some of these are, I thought we could compare and contrast these. So what do I have in store for you? Now, I think one of the palettes that's been in this type of video before is the Colourpop That's Taupe. This is easily one of my all-time favorite cool tone color stories that is on the market till date. And it's also quite affordable, especially if you're in the US and you can get a hold of Colourpop a little bit more easily. This, I've always said how I love this greenish tone taupe that's in the bottom, but I don't think I've ever compared it in a swatch to some of my other, what I would like to dub green tone taupes in one of the other palettes that I will be comparing it to today. So we've got some neutrals in here that are really nicely cooler leaning. I would say that in the matte department, it's not exactly 100% cool toned. I feel that especially these two still have some warmth to them, but especially the bottom row is nicely cool toned. And also the shimmers in the middle are on point. The EU-based alternative that I've always recommended you get if you find Colourpop difficult to buy because it's in the US and you don't want to pay for customs, I've always recommended this. This is the Glamshop Kokosanka. This is similar-ish, but it's mainly deeper, and I feel it's more cool-toned in the lighter spectrum compared to the darker spectrum, and you know, if you compare it to the Colourpop as well. So I feel especially this one is a little bit more warm tone in here, but everything else is cool-toned, and we do get a very intense duochrome in the middle. And this is just the glammed up version of the That's Taupe. However, this has been discontinued, which is why I thought we could also have a look at the Zimna Mocca. And this is the newer palette from Glamshop. I believe they launched a coffee range in the fall time of 2022, and I finally got my hands on the most cool toned color story they do. And I think this can actually be more similar than the That's Taupe. However, when I swatched it, it seemed to have a lot of like sheerer, more almost iridescent, whimsical kind of shades. So I'm very interested to see what it will do on my eyes. But I thought that for completion's sake, because this is now the cool tone 9-pan that Glamshop has to offer, that I could, like, this would make for like a nice, like 3 palettes to compare. Now, I mentioned green tone taupes, and the palette with green tone taupes that I absolutely adore is the Mary Jane from Melt Cosmetics. This is not a formula for the faint of heart. It's flaky. You can just see my mirror is covered in little flecks. But especially these two here. And I've never put them next to the Colourpop stuff. To some people, it may look a bit more like a gold because this can pull a little golden toned, but I do feel they still have that brown, cool, gray undertone to them that makes up a taupe. And one of the things that I love about taupes is that depending on the blend, they can be purple, or they can be green toned, or they can be more brown toned or more grain toned. And especially like this section here, I just absolutely adore. This also has some warmth in here towards the lighter end of the spectrum, but I can make this work perfectly fine, but the formula does need a bit of work. And then a palette that I wanted to put in here to remember, like just to remind myself I even own this, because I own the Lunar Beauty Lunar Eclipse. And the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse is another one of those palettes that I think, lovely cool tones, but it does have some warmth, especially in this corner here. I think this is going to be the outlier of the palettes I'm comparing it to today, because this has a full row of blues and grays towards the bottom that truly make this a cool tone palette. But I just thought it would be fun to also compare it to the formula of the Melt, because this also has some sparkly shimmers that are a lot less flaky. So I think from a formula standpoint, this may actually be a lot of people's favorite. I just wish we got more cool tone mattes in that middle row with this one, because looking at it, the only true cool tone is this purpley shade, and everything else is warm, which I've always disliked about it. It's too warm toned for it to be a true cool tone color story, but still an interesting one, and I definitely need to put this in a palettes I need to go back to video at some point in the future. I'm not gonna do that anytime soon, because this is not the kind of palette I like to reach for if it's like this hot. I've been really actually craving going in with like just single shadows, because I don't even want to do like a full eye look. I'm wearing a K-Beauty palette today that I'm trying out for a review that should be coming on Sunday, so if you want to see what's on my eyes, stay tuned. It is listed in the description box down below if you just want to know the name of the palette, but if you want to have all the information about this palette, then stay tuned till Sunday. So that's sort of like the only palettes I've been really interested in wearing right now. This is just a bit too glammed up, so I'm gonna save it for the fall time and then put it in a like palette review video. So those are the 5 palettes that I wanted to feature and why I wanted to feature them. These are all formulas that I really enjoy. I'm predicting, because I haven't filmed the part where I'm swatching things out yet, I'm predicting that I'm going to be liking the Colourpop and the new Glamshop palette, that I'm gonna like those best. That's my idea. Plus, before we get to the floor, there is one thing I need to ask you, because I'm sort of starting to come to the conclusion of palettes that I feel I can compare, because I've done so many of them now. So I don't have enough categories where I have like 4 to 5 palettes where I can easily do a comparison with it. So if there's anything in particular that you would like to see me compare, then let me know, because then maybe I can keep the series running if this is something you're interested in seeing. If you're like, you've done 12 of these by now, I don't need any more, then that's fine as well. You can leave that in a comment down below. And right now, let's just go to the floor and see what these palettes are like when we compare them. I've blocked out the mirrors, and I think at first glance we can see that there isn't actually that much that is 100% the same. I can definitely see a couple of mattes in these two being similar, but not much else. But I think we have, you know, these two, and this one, and this one, and then maybe this one, and then that one. Or maybe this one should be compared to that reddish tone. So we'll save the Kokosanka for a minute, but we'll go in with these ones. Okay, so I think that in this lighter end of the spectrum, we can definitely see some overlap. I think that maybe this one, so this one from Colourpop and this one from Melt is quite the same. So this one and this one is quite similar. This one from Colourpop and this one from the Kokosanka, no, the Zimna Mocca, are quite similar. But then we get like this yellow tone is very different. And this one I thought might be similar, but I think this may actually be more like this one. So let me take this off and swatch some more of these mattes out. I'll take this one this one, and this one. Again, nothing purpley in here, nothing purpley in here. So here's a Colourpop. That's the Lunar Beauty. Oh, that looks pink. And then here is the Zimna Mocca. So the Zimna Mocca is definitely more neutral. This looks almost red, the Colourpop one. I didn't expect that. Now what all of these palettes have is a rendition of a gray tone matte. We get one in here. This one is a little bit too blue tone perhaps, but we'll give it a shot. This one, and this one doesn't have any gray tone mattes though. So I'm gonna be skipping the melt for this one. But this, and this. So we have Colourpop, Lunar Beauty, Zimna Mocca, and the Kokosanka. So you can just see that the one from the Zimna Mocca actually has a bit of a purpley undertone, making it super cool toned and lovely. The one from the Kokosanka is a bit more gray, so it's more like a true taupey gray, whereas this one from the Colourpop is actually quite dark compared to those two. And this, of course, is more of a blue, as we had expected. So then we just have this like neutral, cooler tone brown in the Colourpop. I don't think there's anything in the melt that really matches, but I think I'm going to be swatching out both of these. Then in the Kokosanka, we get something that looks a little bit more reddish toned, almost. And then something that looks nearly black, so we'll swatch both of those. I think, though, that this one is perhaps the best match, but I don't think there's anything else that is this deep in any of the other palettes. And then this one here in the bottom of the Zimna Mocca I can compare as well. Maybe this one, even though it's probably not the right undertone, but we'll go for it. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go, but just for completion's sake, we've got all the darkest mattes together. You can just see how red the Lunar Beauty is compared to any of the other palettes. So I think my assessment in the first half of the video, where I mentioned how this was so warm toned in terms of mattes and that I wanted more cooler tone mattes, is definitely the right assessment. Like, this is the only cool tone matte we get in the entire palette, and then of course we get blues, but in terms of neutrals it doesn't have that much to offer. I really do like this shade here from the Zimna Mocca. It has a bit of sparkle, which helps with the blendability, and I think it's actually the most similar to this one from Melt, which it looks horribly swatched because I was doing it on the wrong finger, but it's a really nice cooler toned brown that isn't too deep, which I actually enjoy. This is lovely too, but it's very sort of leaning towards a black. It's this one right here. It's still soft enough for it to be a brown, so I can still definitely get away with it. But this is more like, I can only use it as a liner kind of vibes, whereas this, if I want to go for something super smoky, I can still use something like this in the crease for sure. This, and then also this, I think are quite similar, and also that brown from That's Taupe. I think all three can be used interchangeably. It won't make a huge difference. And this is probably why I've always felt like the That's Taupe and the Kokosanka are so similar, because we get these two mattes and these two mattes that are pretty close together, and then we get those sparkly bits, which we will be comparing in a minute. So there's definitely, like, they're close. They're not dupes, but they definitely have a similar vibe. I think this is definitely like a lighter version of this one. So the Zimna Mocca, if you think this was too dark for you, then maybe this can be nice, because this is fair tone heaven. I think the only two we still really need to have a look at is this and this, which I don't have anything that matches it. And then I think we've covered all of the mattes. Maybe I should swatch this very light thing, but it seems to have a bit of a shine running through it. But first these two, ooh, because those seem to be, oh no, nothing alike. Nothing alike. Maybe this? Nah. The Lunar Beauty is so much more warm toned. Look at how neutral this is from the Kokosanka. This one right here, which, I mean, it looks green because I've mentioned how I feel this is a green tone taupe. It can work as a gold as well. It's like, it's green, it's not quite mustard, it's not quite taupe, it's like all of those things. It's a stunning shade. Time for shimmers. I think actually that in terms of shimmers, this is where we get the most variation actually between these palettes. I think it's the mattes that make them look a little similar-ish. But in terms of shimmers, I really don't see anything that I can truly truly compare to one another, just at a first glance. So what should we do first? Yeah, I do want to swatch this against like both of these and this one. I know it's not going to be the same looking at it, but we can give it a shot. So here we have the Colourpop, which I've always mentioned is like a green tone taupe. Here is that darker gray shimmer, but it definitely has like a cocky, mossy green undertone to it, I feel. And then here is that other shimmer from the Mary Jane, which is one of my favorites. And it's the more intense version of something like the That's Taupe. It just does. And that last shade from the Mary Jane has always been more of a topper, so it's not that exciting, I feel, but those are definitely really pretty shades. So we have this really sparkly number in the Colourpop, and we have a very sparkly thing here. We've got some sparkly things in the Kokosanka. I know that this is a straight up silver, and none of these palettes have that, but I think it can be a nice comparison to something like that's in here. I don't think anything that's in here is going to be sparkly enough. So let me just, and maybe I'll get this light shade out of the way as well. So then we've done like all the lighter shades. So here we have all of those shimmers. This is the Colourpop. It looks rose gold. And a little bit too peachy, so it's got very much a warmer undertone, whereas the ones from the Kokosanka are more like true cool tones. This is like a pinky quartzy kind of vibe, and this is a little bit more like white to silver, but without it being a true silver like the Lunar Beauty. Like the Lunar Beauty, you can just see that it's got a very, that it's got depth to its undertone, whereas the one from Kokosanka definitely has a more transparent base, which these two just look wet. I mean, the camera doesn't do them justice at all. These two I feel are also quite similar. So the Melt and the shade we have here from Lunar Beauty, and I again prefer the Melt over the Lunar Beauty one. So I'm definitely establishing that the Lunar Beauty is just not my perfect palette for me. But now I want to get into these two shimmers. I don't feel the Lunar Beauty has anything like it, nothing at all. But over here we have this shade, and here we get both of those and that. So I want to swatch out those to see how they compare. So here we have the swatches of those neutrals. So here's the Colourpop, and they look so lackluster compared to the Kokosanka ones. Like the Kokosanka ones have a really nice bit of shine, and where this one looks like it's going to be a very impactful taupe shimmer, it just doesn't have that much impact. It's actually a little bit sheer, whereas the one from the Zimna Mocca, that one has a really nice darker base. It's got a really nice shine to it. I feel that this one and this one are perhaps too similar. Like if you were to own both of these, you really didn't need both. And I feel that both of those are very similar to the Colourpop shades, but then with better pigmentation. It just is. And this is a really interesting cool tone. It's like lavender gray, but not quite. It's really interesting. It's a really nice inner corner highlight. Oh, and let me then swatch this as well, because I said it had a little bit of shine. It's a duochrome. It's got a white base and then it shifts pink. But now I just have like some of these like smoky grays left. Let me compare this to this. I think we've swatched all of these, so no need to dig into any of those. But this, here's the Melt. Here is the Eternal Eclipse. So here's the Melt and the Eternal Eclipse, and I think I'm also just going to swatch this and this for a hot minute, because these are like the deeper shimmers we have. So here's the other shades from the Lunar Beauty. Ooh, it was like a black with purple sparkle, but I know that that sparkle doesn't translate to the eye from trying it. And we also need to bring in the Kokosanka duochrome that's in there. Like, it's that brown base with like this oil slick flip. It's really stunning, but it's not too green. Very often they have a lot of green in it. This is more like a purple blue, which makes it go perfectly with the cool tones. And I think we just have like some of these like bronzy brown things left, right, to compare. So let me swatch those out. So here's the Lunar Beauty, straight up bronze. That's the Meld. That's a stunning cool tone brown shimmer. Like, it's got actual silver specks running through it. And then here's the Kokosanka, which, oh my word, it's almost the same to the Melt. The Melt has a bit more depth. This definitely has a bit more gold running through it, but it's very stunning. This gold I haven't swatched yet. And it's a green tone gold. So I think for a minute I need to go back into this and this to see, like, if you put it actually next to a gold, they can just see that it's so much more green toned and so much more taupe leaning, these two shades. Like, this is so much more yellow toned. But yeah, it's one of those antique-y golds. If I go for a gold, it's that kind of gold. But then you can just see that it definitely, like, if you put it against browns, it may look like they're going to be golds, but this and also that one from Colourpop definitely have that greener undertone. The Colourpop is perhaps a bit more neutral. So that's it. Those are all of the palettes that I wanted to compare. Was that everything? I think I've skipped, I feel like I've skipped something. I think I haven't swatched this one yet, have I? Let me swatch that. It's another duochrome. But it's a very interesting one. Let me put it here because my arm is completely, like, it just doesn't really go with anything that the other palettes have. Look at that. It's a pink base, but then with a blue-white flip. Really interesting. So this, again, it's got some like duochromes in here and here. This has duochromes, which none of the other palettes have. I feel that the Glamshop ones, for how much you pay, are exceptional quality. They're available in the EU, which is lovely. If you're in the US, the Colourpop, that Taupe is going to see you through for sure. If you want something that's more intense and smoky, then I would recommend the Melt Mary Jane. And if you want those blue tones in there, I mean, I pretty much keep the Lunar Beauty around for the bottom row. But in terms of these, I'm just not a fan now that I've swatched them again. Did I swatch this shade? I don't think I did. Maybe I should do that one too. Hold on. So let me swatch Meteor, which is the most taupey thing that's in here, and it is one of the more interesting shades. It's like a gray lavender base with a lot of multi-dimensional sparkles. So yeah, this has been my favorite shade, and like these grays and blues at the bottom. That's what I tend to wear when I wear this palette. That's the look I go for. But not for the neutrals, which doesn't come as a surprise, I think. But yeah, that shade is phenomenal. So I hope my prediction was right, and it's indeed the Colourpop and the second Glamshop palette, that's Zimna Mocca, that I like best. You will know by now. I still need to film that part. So I just wanted to come on here to round out the video, and thank you so very much for watching. Thumbs up this video if you do want to support the channel. You can also subscribe if you want to see more by me. I make videos 4 times a week on this channel, so I hope you'd like to stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you in my next one. Bye-bye!